Yeah, that ain't good. By the way, this little club car is just worked out awesome. I've been driving the wheels off of it around here. It's just a great little light duty utility work vehicle for around the place. And Nancy even likes driving it. For those of you that are new to the channel or not familiar with this, I've got a playlist on the channel where we did several videos reviving this little club car. So if you're interested, you can go check out that playlist and take a look. If I remember, I'll leave a link to it in the description. Some of you may wonder what I did with the old rotten gas that I pumped out of this thing. I put it in the Ford. When you fire this thing up and run it, you know, the exhaust just stinks, but it runs on it. I mean, these old tractors were designed to run on all kinds of different fuels. If you had the right manifold on this, you could even burn kerosene in it back in the day. So a little old rotten gas doesn't bother it a bit. It was mentioned in the comments on the previous video. They were wondering why there was a pressure cap on the radiator here, since this is a non-pressurized system. It's the cap that came with the tractor. I do have one on order. It was only like $6 or $7. The old Ford tractor radiator caps are really cool. They taper back. They got a tail on them. It's a non-pressurized system. So, yeah, that's what's happening there. Okay, now that this bucket has sat overnight, the oil and water have separated, and as you can see, there is quite a bit of oil floating on top of the antifreeze. So I was in fact getting oil out of that when I was draining it. So yeah, definitely had oil in that radiator. Time to do the preps to take the fuel tank off. Try to keep from stabbing myself with a screwdriver here. See that sediment bowl is loose on there. That did it. Okay, I got the battery out and it's over on the bench charging some more. I have to the light on. I've got to disconnect the oil line from the gauge. I've got to disconnect the ammeter, and way back in there, that yellow and black connector, that's to the on and off switch for the ignition. I got to disconnect all that. Then I got to start taking all of these bolts loose that bolt the hood to the dashboard here. And then there's a couple of bolts up front here. You can actually leave those in and tilt this hood up. I may do that. We'll see. See if that's going to work or not. I'm going to have to take part of that air filter assembly apart too. Clear the hood. Just about got this oil line undone. Oh yeah, sparking a little bit. Bingo. We'll have to unscrew. I don't know. Stripped. That one's loose. That one's loose. All right, there's a big screw on the back side here, I got to undo and lift that top of that air breather off. Loosen that collar, but I think I can just rotate it to clear the hood. Yeah, there. So I don't have to take that all apart. This hood has kind of glued itself to the dashboard. Gingerly try to pry it loose here. You can see where somebody's been here before me doing the exact same thing. The sheet metal's a little crinkled there. I'm sure when this thing was new, you just unhook the lines and unhook the bolts and she would have tilted right up. But after 75 years and numbers of farmer fixes and bent sheet metal and everything else, that hinge just didn't work anymore. So I took the front bolts out and got all these bolts loose. The dashboard bolts are completely missing. They're not even in there. And you know, this thing should have just tilted right up, but it didn't. So I am going to grab the cherry picker, sling it, and lift it off and move on. Looks like I gotta cut a tie wrap right there. I bought this Harbor Freight cherry picker 25 years ago, and it's a high reach model, and I love it because I work by myself 99% of the time, and it sure is nice having something with such a high reach feature. Okay, let's talk about this little flathead four-cylinder for a minute. You can barely see them behind the manifold and the carburetor, but those cover plates in the block access the valve train. It's a flathead. There's nothing up here, including any oil lines to lubricate, you know, a rocker arm assembly. That is all down here in the block. So that's as far as the oil is going to travel, unless if your valve guides are worn, oil's going to seep between, you know, the valve guide and the valve stem and make its way up into the combustion chamber. This is your crankcase ventilation. Some old rigs, including like the old Dodge Flathead 6s, which I cut my teeth on, would have a vent coming out the side of the oil pan, a tube with a screen filter and pointing down. If these get plugged up, the gases inside that crankcase have got a vent somewhere, so they're gonna come up the cylinders past the rings and into the combustion chamber. So this, although you really can't tell by looking at it, I've cleaned this. It's been soaked in the parts washer over there, and then sprayed with brake clean, and you know, then blown out with compressed air. I do see blow-by coming out of this when this thing's been running for a while. So there is some crankcase vapor coming past the rings. So that reinforces my idea that with a blown head gasket, you've got crankcase gases making it past the ring into the combustion chamber, getting a little oil vapor through a break in the head gasket and making its way into the cooling jacket, hence the radiator. So why did I wind up with all that oil up here on top? Well, oil is lighter than water, and over time, you know, you're going to get a puddle of it up here, and when she got warm, it went out the overflow. Where's the overflow tube? Right at the top of the radiator. And so, yeah. As far as maybe the block freezing at one time and putting a crack in the oil galley and getting oil into the water that way. I'm leaning away from that, and here's why. This thing, when it's running, runs between 25 and 30 psi oil pressure. If you got a crack in that system, you're not going to run oil pressure that high, in my opinion. Secondly, with that kind of oil pressure behind it, if there is a crack, that oil pump is going to pump that oil, and it's going to pump a lot of oil really quick into the cooling jacket, into the radiator, and decrease what's in the crankcase really fast. And you're going to see a lot more oil, in my opinion, coming out the overflow. And this thing, it ain't that low, not even a quart. So what little oil it is losing, I'm pretty much convinced it's oil vapor, oil crankcase gases getting past the rings, into the combustion chamber, through a break in the head gasket, making its way into the cooling system. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. Okay, the next thing is, let's get these spark plugs out of here. We'll examine those. Those are brand new plugs. I put them in about a month ago. We'll examine those, and then we will start taking head bolts loose. Well, I guess I better take that radiator hose off of there as well. What I did for the sequence in the book, I just grabbed a Sharpie and wrote on all the head bolts the order, the number order which they're going to get removed from. So I'm going to take the air nozzle, compressed air, and blast out these spark plug recesses, because they're all full of junk, and then pull the spark plug wires off. I numbered them too, and so I don't have to screw around with the firing order, and we'll start pulling stuff apart here. This plug's only been in here about a month, but oily and carboned. Guess I better unbolt the oil filter from the head while I'm at it. Might make it easier taking the head off. All these head bolts are 11/16. So I'm just gonna take them off in the order as they're marked. And bring you back when I got them all out. Then we'll take this head off. Everything is numbered and in its happy place. All the head bolts except for 2 of them were covered in oil. I'm not getting a good feeling about what I'm gonna find when I get this head pried off of here. Try not to bust the hose neck off of this thing. All right. Yeah. Here we go. A lot of carbon on number 1. There's oil on number 2. It looks like number 2 and number 3 are our oily ones, especially number 2. It looks like, well, I mean, I think 75 years old. Of course, it's been apart. So all the valves are pretty carboned up. So I'm going to gingerly pull this head gasket off. I thought it may have been blown here at number 3, but this spot here looks real suspicious, along with back here. So let me get that off and we'll do an assessment. Well, I strongly suspect our issue is between 2 and 3. There's a big nick right there. 2 and 3 and 3 and 4. As evidenced by all of this right here. It looks like between 2 and 3 is the strongest contender. This is coming up right here between 3 and 4. So yeah, so I got a lot of cleanup to do here, and hopefully my new head gasket is in the mail today. I'm also gonna drain the block because I've got a lot of residual crap liquid in the block here. I should have drained that before I pulled the head off, but that's all right. Well, there you go. I'm pretty sure it's a blown head gasket. I'm going to do a lot of cleanup, obviously, and some inspecting. I'm not taking the head or anything like that to the machine shop. I'll throw a straight edge on it, use a feeler gauge, and call it good. If I keep having trouble with this engine, you know, overheating and getting oil in there even after the new head gasket, then I'm not entertaining rebuilding this engine. This tractor isn't mine. It's on long-term loan here from my pal Larry, which means he dropped it off and wasn't ever planning on picking it back up, because he's got 3 other N-Series Ford tractors and then a 600 series, I think. I mean, Larry's got tractors coming out his ears, plus a million engines. So he was just being a nice guy, and, you know, when I first bought this place, and he says, hey, you need a tractor to work your 5 acres. And he dropped off some implements with it. And I appreciate that, but it seems all I ever do is work on this Ford. Hey, there's a 6V71 Detroit diesel on Craigslist that's a runner with a 5-speed Spicer transmission. $500. Man, wouldn't that Ford get up and sing with a Detroit in it? Now I'm dreaming. Well, with that, I'm going to sign off. We'll pick up on this in part 3 after I get everything cleaned up. New head gasket comes in, and then we'll go from there. Picked up a few more new subscribers. Thanks a lot for joining us if you're new here. And to those of you that commented on the last video on this Ford head gasket project, there's a lot of great ideas and great suggestions and encouragement. And I just want to let you all know that I appreciate that. And Mike from Getting Greasy Garage is still lobbying hard for a Merc Flathead V8 with a tri-power 3 Stromberg carbs on it. Yeah, what am I going to do with that? This thing's got 2-wheel mechanical brakes, you know. Anyway, I'm babbling now, so I'm going to stop. You all have a good day. We'll see you again as we pick up on part 3 in a few days. Bye now.